This pedestrian bridge is one of many along the Lone Mountain Trail. Here, it crosses an inlet to the Gowan South Detention Basin. And while it may be serene today, recently torrents of water have come into this facility. Welcome to the Flood Channel. I'm your host, Erin Neff. This facility, like many others, quietly does its job all summer long. But the district speaks loudly in warning the public about flash flood dangers. Flash flood season runs from July through September. And each year, the district holds a press conference with partners to remind the public about the summer monsoon. This year, we invited reporters into the bottom of Pitman North Detention Basin in Henderson. Mayor Deborah March kicked things off.
We're here today in West Henderson, and you see significant growth that's occurring in the area. And it wasn't that many years ago, I think in 2009, that the M Resort opened, and you didn't see much happening out in this area. In fact, what you did see was flooding and large swaths of land downstream that were flood zones because there wasn't a flood basin here. And things are obviously very different here today because of the flood basin that is here. And this is a beautiful facility. This Pitman North Detention Basin helps to protect this entire area. And this is actually the 100th basin that was built in the region. And it's really due to the collaboration in the valley with the Regional Flood Control District and, of course, all of our Public Works Department, who work together to ensure the safety and well-being of all of our residents. Most of this land in this area right now is zoned commercial or industrial, and we're working hard to build a more diverse economy here in West Henderson. We want to make sure that we're creating investment and opportunity with jobs so that folks aren't just dependent upon one industry in the valley. So some of the new facilities that you'll see here in the West Henderson area include Amazon, FedEx, Haas Automation, Safe Life Defense, and many others. And in fact, Henderson Hospital will be building shortly another campus here in the West Henderson area. And of course, the Raiders headquarters is a stunning centerpiece for the West Henderson community across from the Henderson Executive Airport. We've been busy with residential development in this area as well, and we're excited to see the many housing opportunities that are available here. And these opportunities are available here because of the work that was done by the Flood District to ensure that they were safe from flooding in our community. So all of these developments are very impressive, but it wouldn't be possible without the Flood Control District. This basin is critical both for providing flood protection for residents, businesses, and also for creating economic investment. Every flood control project creates sustainable jobs, which is important as we continue to recover from the pandemic. There's many good paying jobs that were created. In fact, I believe you had folks working in here for over a year period of time, very good paying jobs and also great benefits. This helps also to keep our community safe. Henderson is ranked the second safest city of large cities in America. And we all want our residents to be safe this flash flood season as well.
At this year's press conference, both our chair and vice chair helped get the word out.
2 years ago, I got a first-hand look at what flash flooding can do right up the street from my own house. One evening, a microburst dumped a few inches of rain in a short period in the West Valley. While the detention basin, one just like this, did its job, unfortunately, the water continued out of the basin and broke through a dirt berm, flooding the roads and dozens of homes in Mountain's Edge. Thankfully, no one was hurt, and flood control, he was out there on the scene at the moment, and our county public works team were able to repair the earthen dam and clean up the mess on the road as quickly as possible. This was a stark reminder of just how important flood control facilities like this are, and why decades ago we came together as a region to make it happen. We're standing here in Henderson, but you can look across the street over there at unincorporated Clark County, And the reason why we work together is because floods don't know geographic political boundaries. It's great that the nearby St. Rose Parkway Trail, which I've ridden my bike on many times, which has washed out before, is now protected from being washed out. It's a win-win for the community when we can offer flood protection for life and property while improving safe access to trails and other amenities. And I have to give a shout out to my colleague from Henderson. They have always cared, as cyclists, they have always cared about our multimodal folks on the roads. I'd also like to point out that the water from the basin drains to Lake Mead, and we can all do our part to keep trash off the streets. Lake Mead is our source of drinking water, and we need to do everything we can to keep it clean. This basin has a special environmental feature that allows stormwater to be cleaned before it exits the basin. Inside this basin is a smaller mini basin that traps debris, oils, and other contaminants during a typical rain event, and that's just right over on the back side of here. After the rain has passed, public works crews can go in and remove the debris that settles in the basin. These types of structures are being built in basins throughout Clark County to help clean stormwater drains from developed areas and protect the environment. It's important that we do everything we can to protect our fragile environment here in Southern Nevada. Thank you.
One of the district's strongest partnerships is with the National Weather Service in Las Vegas. We work together to make sure weather information can be shared in real time during flash flood events.
The partnership that we have with the Flood Control District and the National Weather Service stands as a testament of what federal and local agencies can do when they work together. They're terrific partners, and we're glad to help try to keep our local citizens safe. We were reminded this week that monsoon season is already underway. You know, typically we like to think of this press conference as the start of the monsoon season. Sometimes it throws us a little curveball and starts early. We had some flooding up near Moapa and Overton. I think the event also highlights that how much people don't realize how protected we are because of the flood control infrastructure that exists in this county, and how much it really protects the public from dangerous flash flooding. And so, you know, certainly the flood control's work is not done. They're always improving, they're always adding, and we need to support that as much as we can. When we're talking about flash flooding around the county, for those areas that are still unflood controlled and you see types of flooding happen across roadways, I want to remind people it does not matter how shallow that water is, please do not drive through it. We have to remind our children to stay out of washes and detention basins. They are not areas to play, even though they may look like it to a young kid. Talk with your kids. Let them know that these places are off limits. They can become dangerous in a very quick amount of time. And so that's a message that we always want to pump, you know, before and during monsoon season.
Fire and rescue crews are on the front lines of flash flooding. They undergo training each year in swiftwater rescue, and often they risk their own lives to save others. Clark County Deputy Fire Chief Warren Whitney oversees the training.
Typically, most of our swiftwater rescues are people that are in vehicles. They try to cross the water and they get stuck. Their car starts floating or they lose control and they get stuck. And once that car's in there, the water kind of boils up and sometimes they can't get out. So for vehicles, we just want to reiterate, do not attempt to cross flooded roadways. As he alluded to before, turn around, don't drown. 6 inches of water, only 6 inches of water can cause most vehicles to lose control. 12 inches of water will cause most vehicles to float. And to reiterate how dangerous crossing floodwaters are in vehicles, half of all flood-related deaths happen in vehicles. People that are trapped in their vehicle or they get on top and they get swept away. For people, for adults and children, we want to reiterate, stay away from flood channels. Natural flood channels and man-made flood channels. They usually have very steep slopes and unstable footing due to the loose gravel and rocks on the edge. To reiterate a point he also made is educate your children on the dangers of flood channels and tell them to stay away. I know personally, I never got that lesson, and I was playing in natural flood channels when I was younger. It was the year that the dam overflowed. So there was a ton of floodwaters, and I was out there playing in it. Luckily, nothing happened. For the public, just so they know, and people experiencing homelessness are especially susceptible to getting caught in flash floods because they use the man-made flood channels for shelter. And these flash floods happen so quickly that they're not able to get out. I mean, they'll live way back in there, and when the water comes, they don't have a chance to get out. We usually have at least one fatality a year. At 6 miles an hour, the water will put 67 pounds of pressure on your legs. I think everyone would agree that's enough to knock you over at 6 inches. On the body, if it's deep enough that you've fallen in, it'll put 134 pounds of pressure on your body. At 9 miles per hour, it's 151 pounds of pressure on your legs and 302 pounds of pressure on your body. Now, why this is important is when you're caught in a flood channel, you could be, as you float down, you could come up against a strainer. Strainers are debris that are in the flood channels, piles of logs, trees, fence line, debris, wires or utilities that have been washed up with the water. And if you get caught against one of those in 6 to 9 mile an hour water flow, a lot of people can't free themselves, and a lot of times they go under.
All channels carry water to or from neighborhood roads and detention basins. District General Manager Steve Parrish talked about how the engineering of the flood control system is saving lives.
Right now we're standing in the Pitman North Detention Basin. This basin was constructed just a few years ago. It's a pretty large facility. It will hold about 500 million gallons of water, which is enough water to fill about 830 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Another way of looking at it, it's about 1,500 acre-feet of water. So an acre-foot is about a football field size of area, 1 foot deep. And if you can imagine 1,500 of those stacked up, it's higher than the stratosphere. That's how much water can be contained in this facility. So it's large for a reason. There's a 50 square mile area that drains to this location. It goes all the way up into the McCullough Hill Range to the left. It goes across I-15 and into the Spring Mountain Range to the south and west. And all that water comes down and accumulates at this one location. So it's a great spot for a detention basin. And as Mayor March mentioned in her comments, it's protecting a lot of development downstream. We got the Raiders practice facilities directly protected by this facility. The St. Rose Parkway is a major thoroughfare. It needs to be protected. But beyond that, north of that is the Silverado Ranch area. Thousands of homes, churches, schools, businesses, all in that area that enjoy the protection of this flood control facility. I don't know if you've driven around yet, but on the north side of this basin is the lion's habitat. And one of the residents there in the lion's habitat is Ozzy the giraffe. Ozzy kept a sharp eye on the contractor when they were building this facility, so we appreciate the extra inspection effort on the part of Ozzy. But if he was standing in this basin right now, in the basin, if we had a 100-year event, the water level in this basin will be about 10 feet above Ozzy's head. Ozzy is 13 feet tall from head to hoof, so that gives you a pretty good idea of how much water and how deep the water could be in this basin during a 100-year event. A 100-year event's a pretty rare event. There's a 1% chance of a 100-year event occurring in any given year, which is relatively rare. And so we design these basins for those rare events, and any storm up to and including that 100-year would be protected, and areas downstream would be protected by this facility. So it's a great facility. That as the general manager of the flood control district, I sleep a lot better at night knowing that we have detention basins like this protecting the community. These basins work they work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. These basins are out here protecting the community. You don't have to flip a switch. You don't have to push a button. You don't have to open any gates. There's no human interaction for this basin to work. It just is here doing its job night or day. And so knowing that gives me a lot of comfort. As mentioned earlier, there's 102 of these basins now that have been constructed throughout Clark County. We've constructed 667 miles of channels and storm drains that connect all of those detention basins and collect all that water and convey it out to Las Vegas. So we've come a long way. We've got more work to do, and we've got more detention basins to build. We've got over 200 miles of channels and storm drains left to build on our master plan. We're about 75% complete with the implementation of our master plan. But so there are areas out in Clark County that don't have the benefit of having a flood control facility protecting them. In Clark County, there's been 35 flood-related deaths since 1960. 2 of those were just last year. And so it's not something like, oh, that happened 10 or 12 or 15 years ago. It won't happen now. It does happen now, and it will happen again if you're not careful and if you don't understand the dangers of these flood flows.
Oh my God, this car's gonna hit us. Oh my God! Oh, we're floating! We're floating! We're floating! Oh my God! Oh my God!
We have all seen the devastation that floods can cause to homes and lives in Clark County. Has your neighborhood or home ever been affected by major storms? Federal flood insurance is a smart and cost-effective investment if you think your home is vulnerable. Some easy-to-understand assessments can help determine if you need flood insurance. Call your insurance agent or call 1-888-CALL-FLOOD or visit the Regional Flood Control District's website for guidance. See if flood insurance makes sense for you.
The district also has new ways of messaging the public, and this flash flood season will give us plenty of opportunity to try it all. The National Weather Service is consistently upgrading radar and satellite detection of storms. This provides a better look into how much rain will fall. They also tried to predict longer-term forecasts.
Our models are a little inconclusive this year on whether we're going to have an above or below average season, but I think, the last couple of years we've had kind of a down monsoon season, and so people need to be prepared for that kind of bounce back to normal, and we may see a little bit more activity than we're used to.
Since we've had 2 whole years of the non-soon, the district's advertising campaign is hoping to remind people about the dangers. This year, we've updated our Dranger Danger character, who always makes the wrong decision.
This looks like a great place to play. Danger, danger, hide, hide. Grab you up, sweep you away. Shimmy, shimmy down to the underground. We got rats and bats and broken glass. It's the water park of no return. Basically, there's a good chance you die, kid. Where you going? Away from you!
That commercial is aimed at television audiences. You'll also see Dranger showing off his dance moves on TikTok, where we target messages to a younger audience. If you want to see more district ads, you can find them at Regional Flood on TikTok or on YouTube at Regional Flood Control District. This park is high and dry today, but in late June, a storm pushed floodwaters into parks, homes, and roads in Moapa Valley. Monsoon moisture moved into the county on June 29th, and by the afternoon, intense thunderstorms had sprung up. In the small towns of Logandale and Overton, many lateral washes drain right through developed areas on their way to the muddy river. The flood flows damaged several homes and garages and deposited mud and debris on the streets. Winds also knocked down power lines. 2 district gauges in the area recorded high amounts of rainfall. The California Wash Gauge registered 1.8 inches total, most of it in 1 hour. This is what we call 25-year intensity. Logan Wash had 1.5 inches of rain in just 30 minutes, a 50-year intensity. Over the years, the district has funded $65 million worth of projects in Moapa Valley. There's still a lot of work to do, with remaining projects estimated to cost $158 million. Flood insurance is a separate policy from a homeowner's plan, but anyone in Clark County is eligible to purchase this protection.
Flood insurance is just another tool that's available to the residents in Clark County to make them more resilient to flooding. It's a part of a program, the National Flood Insurance Program, that was initiated by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And what it is it's an insurance program to cover losses for storm damage or damage to a home that may result from storm flows. And so it's important to remember that your typical homeowner's policy does not cover flood damage from storms. So if you live in a risky area or a high-risk area, it's highly recommended that you get flood insurance for your property.
Flood insurance policies have a 30-day waiting period. You should probably consider getting a policy if you live at the downstream end of a cul-de-sac. Also, if your home is adjacent to a wash or a road that has recently flooded, it may be a good idea. And cost is another consideration.
Flood insurance is really inexpensive if you're not in a special flood hazard area. That's called a preferred risk policy. And so those policies are very inexpensive. It's about $1 a day, roughly $400 a year that you would spend for one of these types of policies. So it's a really cheap insurance, and it's a good idea, even if you're not in a flood zone, to consider getting flood insurance for your property.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency is launching a new flood insurance program called Risk Rating 2.0. It's a new way for FEMA to assess risk.
In terms of determining the rate, they're developing a whole new system where they take into account several different situations. For example, the height of your home versus the water surface elevation, or the distance from your home from the flooding source, how much your home costs or how much it would cost to repair a home that was flooded. And they take all of that into account into this methodology, and then they determine a rate based on that. And so it's much fairer, it's much more equitable to people. You could have a house that's on the fringe of the flood zone, say you're half a mile away from the flooding source, and you would have been paying under the old system the same amount of insurance as a house that's right next to the whatever's creating the flood zone or the flood source. So in this case, it will take into account that difference in distance, and it will give you a different rate. And so it's much fairer to the people in the flood zone or people outside of the flood zone. They're paying a rate that's actually customized to your property.
Most policies will only increase by about $10. About 20% of policies will actually cost less, and just a few will end up costing more. The changes take effect October 1st. Since the new rates are based on the elevation of your property, you may see rates go down.
An elevation certificate you can get, you can hire an engineer or a surveyor to do that for you, and that may reduce your rates on your flood insurance. There may be elevation certificates available already depending on when your house was constructed. You might be able to get that from your local jurisdiction, Clark County or the city of Las Vegas or whichever jurisdiction you're in. They'll provide that information for you if it's available. If it's not available, you'd have to hire an engineer or surveyor to do that work for you. But you could get a lower rate if it's unknown what your floor elevation is. FEMA's probably going to charge you a higher rate because of that. And so if you do know it and it's higher than the water surface elevation from the flooding source, then you might get a discount on your rates.
Clark County and the cities of Henderson, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, and Boulder City participate in the community ratings system. FEMA gives automatic discounts to residents in these jurisdictions based on the work each member does to make the community more flood resilient.
For sure, I think it's a good idea to get insurance, and one of the reasons we don't have as many policies as, say, Houston or some coastal areas is because we have more of a riverine type flooding in Clark County. It's not coastal. And so we have less policies here, but that means that we have more areas that are not in a flood zone, which means that if you wanted a policy, it'd be really inexpensive. So It's a good idea to purchase flood insurance. I'd love to see more policies in effect. You know, you never know when you're going to be flooded. About 40%, 45% of the claims that are filed with FEMA are for properties that are not in a special flood hazard area. They're outside of the flood hazard area. And so it's always a good idea to consider flood insurance. And keep in mind too that you don't have to actually own the home. Flood insurance is available for renters. So if you're renting a home or even renting an apartment, you can have your contents covered. So and that would be an even less expensive policy. It would cover clothing and appliances and furniture and all that type of thing would be covered under that type of policy.
Let's all have a safe flash flood season. And if you'd like more information about flood insurance or other ways to stay safe, check out our website, regionalflood.org. And you can also follow us on social media @regionalflood.